Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast with Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, Rob Lewis. I am Eric Kane. Thank you, as always, to Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Been local and trusted since 1999. If you have a need for siding, roofing, garage, windows, whatever the case may be, if you need renovation to your home, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. That phone number is 865-524-5888. The website is exteriorhomesolutions.com. Got a lot of questions. We'll jump right into it. Discuss how many teams you think will/should be coming into the year with realistic playoff expectations. For example, the 14 playoff every year, probably about 10 teams were being discussed. Now with 12-game playoff, how many do you see should be thinking this way? 15, 20, top 25? How many from the SEC should have playoff aspirations?
I think realistically, I think you're probably looking at 15 to 20, somewhere in there would be probably my realistic number on what that is. In terms of the SEC, we talked about, Rob, the other day where Tennessee was placed. I think there's two clear-cut teams in the SEC, and then outside of that, 3 through 8 are pretty much jumbled together. So from that standpoint, I guess you could say the top 8 have some football playoff realistic expectations. Now, obviously, they're not nearly going to all make it, but I mean, Ole Miss. If Ole Miss is projected by some as a playoff team, why not LSU or why not Tennessee? Right?
Well, I would feel pretty comfortable talking about the SEC, and I would say 8. There are 8 fan bases out there that I think, it's not crazy. That's not crazy talk. I mean, I'm not saying you go out there and bet the house on it, but yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the top 8, here we talking about Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. That's crazy to think about Missouri, but I mean, after last year and what they bring back, you have to. So I'd say 8 fan bases in the SEC right now in August. That's legit sports talk radio conversation.
And we would assume that 4 from the SEC would get in, right?
Yeah, at least 4. I think there's an outside shot at 5, but I think a lot of that depends on how the other conferences finish up, right? If they eat their own, then maybe they get 5. If you have a couple of teams that do well and everybody else kind of is just okay, I'd say Tennessee. I'd say the SEC ends up with just 4.
I can't wait for the first 8-4 SEC team to get into the playoff. It's going to be absolutely glorious.
And beat an 11-1 team from another conference.
And just dog stomp them.
Let's go to another one. I haven't heard a lot about Caleb Herring. How is he progressing? Is he going to be in line to make some noise this year?
Yeah, he's going to play and play a good amount. I think Tennessee's going to, rotate a lot of those Leos. I've said this privately. I've not really said it publicly. I think that's where this defense has a chance to really jump forward, is the fact that you're going to go from, no offense to Roman Harrison, but I think you're going to guys that have a lot more talent than Roman Harrison for that position. So I think those snaps that Roman got a year ago, he started games, in most every game. I think that's going to be a huge jump forward, whether it's Joseph's, Herring, Jordan Ross. I just think there's more talent there with those guys.
Well, in case you missed it, Caleb Herring said today he's gained 45 pounds.
Yeah.
Since up from 205 to 250, which is significant.
How many shakes did he drink a day, Rob?
Same as AP, I think he said.
He said 2 shakes in the morning.
He legit said 5,000 plus calories per day, which
it's amazing what happens when you stop eating candy and junk food and have a nutrition plan. Very different than what he was coming out of high school. And obviously 250 pounds he's a very different football player. And I think that Joshua Joseph's in that category is a very different football player. It's going to be fun to watch that group because I think you can play 2 of them at a time. Heck, they might play 3 of them at a time at some point in certain situations. But I think it's going to be fun to watch that trio of Pierce, Herring, and Joshua Josephs. And then we'll see where Jordan Ross factors in there as a freshman.
Top 2 strong side defensive ends this year. Again, they'll play more, but would you guys agree top 2 would be Dominic Bailey and Tyree West, and Weathersby's right there as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, and again, you can get creative because I I think you're going to see some of the Leos over there at different points in time too on some obvious passing situations. So I think Jason Jenkins, he can slide inside some, he can play outside some. That's the beautiful thing that they have on the defensive line is the versatility to be flexible. It's not just they don't have 13 or 14 guys who are, built like a true defensive tackle or a true Leo or a true. I mean, they got a lot of different body types to tinker with and create schematic advantages with and personnel advantages with.
Sam Smith 2233, how much confidence does the staff have at kicker? What type of range do they have?
That's a great question. I think they have a lot of confidence in Max Gilbert. He carries himself with a certain confidence and swagger. They love what he brings to the table. I believe he does have a big leg, but I don't know his range. I mean, we're never around the kickers, and he's not played in the game yet. So I've never asked anybody kind of what his range is, but I do know he has a fairly big leg.
I talked to somebody this morning because I saw this question yesterday. I wanted to ask. A lot of confidence in the leg, got a tremendous leg. It's, with any kicker, it's can you split the uprights? Can you get it, between the two uprights? And that's kind of what he's focusing on is the accuracy more than the leg because they got a lot of confidence in the leg. We'll go to Gobstopper 1. When is Mike Matthews going to be a full participant, and what is his injury?
He's got a soft tissue muscle strain, whatever you call those things now. I'm not sure what the proper medical jargon is, but just a tender strain, tender muscle. We'll see. I mean, I think he's getting closer. I don't think they're going to rush it or push it, push him out there, but I mean, he's getting close to being there. There's no concern about it being long-term or anything like that. It's just, we talk about it in the war room every July. You're trying to get your team back. The strength coach is trying to get the team back to the head coach 100% healthy. They were for the most part, but, they run a lot in practice and, they just a couple of guys got a little bit of tenderness and we'll see. I think Mike's getting closer to being back. I would expect it any time now.
He did more on Wednesday when the media was there than he's done all fall practice. He was he had a helmet on for one. He was going through stretches, going through some Indy. When they did routes on air, he ran some routes. He and Dante Thornton both actually started up the field kind of where their break would be, and then we go and kind of break and then make the catch. So again, limited still, at least on Wednesday, but did more on Wednesday than he's done all of fall camp so far. Bcowvols says, give me your best story involving these three people. Phillip Fulmer, Jonathan Crompton, Dave Clausen.
Dave Clausen, I called him in his office when he was the head coach at Richmond and asked him if he had taken the job at Tennessee. Got straight into him, which you can't do, obviously, in many places, but got straight to him. I think he was rattled by the fact that I asked that question. Acknowledged me at his press conference, not publicly, but we stood over to the side and talked, and he was surprised that somebody just cold called and asked him if he was coming to Tennessee as the offensive coordinator. That was my first interaction with Dave Clausen. With Jonathan Crompton, the thing that stands out to me, Rob, when I saw this question was that was, I guess, our first attempt at covering a commitment press conference, right? I remember sitting in the field house at Tuscola, and Austin seen me try to put video together. It's not very pretty, but we were trying to do with a camera and put video together and get it uploaded. It was a mess.
More than that, I remember sitting in one lane of traffic going through the gorge and on I-40 trying to, hoping that we got there in time after some kind of accident or something.
Yeah, and a stunning development. It was raining through the gorge. I mean, I know that surprises everybody that it was a rain there. I got a long history with Phillip Fulmer. Probably the most important moment I had with him was a lunch I had with him as I was starting Volquest, where he was deciding whether or not he was going to let me cover practice. And to his credit, he let me cover practice, which obviously changed the direction and helped Volquest get started at a time where a lot of websites were not getting the opportunity to go cover practices and things like the rest of the traditional media was at that point.
.coms. The .coms. Do you have a story with them all three together?
No, not that I'm interested in sharing. I like all three of them. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to. Some of those things will stay in the vault. That was obviously a very difficult year.
My big,
I'm just not going to go down that road with those guys because I got too much respect for all three of them.
My biggest one. This is not a negative on Dave, who I liked a lot too, but I can remember when he just casually dropped. I guess it was in spring practice or after that. In his system, the tackles or the left. He didn't have a left tackle and left guard. He had a strong tackle and a strong guard. They flipped, on every play, and he just kind of. Just casually dropped that like it was nothing. And I can remember what, and it turned out to be a pretty big. I don't think the head coach loved that.
Strong tackle and quick tackle. That's what they used to do in the Veer back in the day as well. Pine says, "Who do you predict to be the starting front seven in the Rabbits pass rushing package?" This is a fun little exercise, AP. Who would you say in the front seven?
James Pierce, somewhere over a lot. Josh Josephs.
West or Weathersby.
Who's sliding inside, AP?
I would say probably
Bailey.
No, I'd probably say Tyree West.
Okay.
And then whatever two linebackers are in the game at that point.
Yeah.
Unless they're in dime, and then it's one linebacker.
Yeah. In order to the Olympics, who from this team are you picking to be in your 4x100 relay team? So who are the four fastest dudes you want on the 4x1?
Squirrel, Sampson,
Thornton.
I'm putting Ricky Gibson on my 4. I think Ricky can run. Is he making your 4, AP?
Probably. I just want Boo Carter on my team.
Okay.
I just think there's a certain moxie to him. In any team event, I want guys like him. They just hate to lose.
What about Peyton Lewis?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he can really run.
Let's go to Jameson. Despite her struggles, I think Kellie Harper is a true VFL. Is there any update on her future coaching aspirations or how she's getting along these days outside of basketball? Is there still a way for her to contribute to her alma mater in a meaningful way?
I don't think there's any contributions coming. I mean, she's obviously she's being a mom and she's raising her kids and trying to decide, they're trying to decide kind of what their next step is. It's obviously Kim Caldwell's program. And as it should be, she's in charge and she's off doing her thing. And I think Kellie Harper's being a mom right now. And obviously they got some buyout money from losing her job. And I think she's trying to figure out what's the next step from her. Does she want to try to stay in major college basketball? Does she want to coach at a lower level? Does she want to contemplate high school? As a parent, I think that there's lots of consideration being given to kind of what you're putting your kid through, and I think that's something that her and her husband have spent a great deal of time doing and are still spending some time doing as to what's next from a stability standpoint for the family.
DoLittleVol is next year's starting center currently on the roster?
I think so.
I can't answer that.
I can't either for sure, but I'm going to say yes. My guess is yes. I don't know who it is, but my guess is yes. Whether that's my Anderson, Satterwhite, Jesse Perry, I think somebody that's currently on this roster will be Tennessee's starting center next year, not a transfer and not a freshman.
Well, here's what I know. If they don't have an answer by November, like in other words, if somebody doesn't take that job and kind of establish themselves as a real option there, I think you'll be forced to go to the portal.
Oh, no question. No question. My thing on the portal, and Rob, you can jump in here too, is with that position, what they're asking the offense to do, can somebody get to the point of making that thing a pretty seamless execution for them in 15 spring practices and a summer off season to hit the ground running to start next year? Or are they better served with somebody who's had a year this year learning it, grooming it, and getting it ready? I mean, I think for the first time their hands really forced on who their future center is going to be. Because always before is slide Carbon over. Okay, we got Ollie Lane. Okay, we got Dane Davis. At some point now, you're going to go, we got to figure it out. You have to figure it out. You're up against the wall. There is no sliding a senior center over next year. Or that type of deal. So you got to go find out who it is, and I think that's the challenge this fall.
I think it's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it, but I think at that position, you'd always rather have a homegrown guy there because of everything that goes into it. And you guys know this, but I mean, and it's also unique because that's not a lot of, there aren't a lot of natural centers, I guess. I mean, unless you're a powerhouse, your best offensive lineman is typically not going to play center. He's going to play tackle or what, which makes Cooper, unusual. And, it's something he talks about. So that's pretty interesting to think about how difficult that would be to come in, however, like you're talking about, with just 15 spring practices and, some film, watching a bunch of film in the summer as a transfer.
Cooper played tackle at Catholic. I know he played defensive tackle, but didn't he play tackle on the offensive line as well? He didn't play center, did he? All right, Rob, you're muted.
I'm pointing at AP. I'm pointing at AP being muted.
He played guard. I don't remember if he played tackle or not. Shoot, that's been so long ago. I mean, like, I've slept 4,000 or 5,000 times since then.
Yeah. I remember Cooper as a defensive tackle because he was really good.
He was really good defensive lineman. Yes, he played guard early in his career. I don't remember if he switched out to tackle or not. Later in his career.
Another question.
I want to say no because Brian Tucker was the tackle on one side, and I'm almost positive Cooper stayed at guard.
Okay. Another one here from DoLittleVol. Do you think the chances of making the playoffs are better this year versus what they're going to be next year? A lot of veterans on the offensive line and defensive line this year will be gone. Nico will have a year of experience and should have some other younger guys ready to step up. Could you foresee a scenario where Tennessee goes super aggressive in the 2025 portal for some missing link type guys like Ole Miss did this past season?
Well, I think you're always going to, AP, I think you're always going to be aggressive in the portal to plug holes. I don't think you're going to go 12 in the portal for this football team next year. But yeah, I mean, you're probably going to have to look at putting some pieces in there. To be honest with you, I haven't given a ton of thought to exactly what the 25 team is going to look like right now. Trying to figure out who's going to be the secondary and the 24 team and see what this ride looks like and go from there. But there's going to be a lot of parts to replace. Now, I think they're pretty bullish on their young offensive linemen, but what do they look like in a year? We'll see. I mean, Rodney's group's going to take a hit because they're going to have a hard time being 13 deep next year, but they are going to bring back some guys who can play. It's not like they're going to be completely void of talent, but they're not going to be 13 deep next year, I don't think. Certainly not this talented 13 deep.
Agreed. I think you're going to have some, as you guys were talking about, not being able to just kick the can down the road another year with certain guys. I think it's almost going to be like the secondary is this year. You're going to have a few positions like that next year where it's like forced change. And so, like, does it mean it'll be worse or better or who knows? But I think it'll certainly be different.
Let's go to ATLVFL. Of all the freshman offensive linemen, which player or players do you think have the best chance of getting second team reps this year?
Freshman offensive lineman?
Yes.
I think Jesse Perry. I think Max Anderson. Those are a couple guys. We'll see where Bennett Warren is at the end of fall camp. But to me, those are a couple guys that stand out as being potential guys in the 2 deep. And again, I would play all those guys. I'd play all of them in the Chattanooga game. I mean, as soon as I could get those guys in there, I would play as many of those offensive linemen as I could. I think you got to see what Vlad can do, right? Or Sham, excuse me, not Vlad, but Sham. You got to see what Sham can do. I think you need to see what Larry Johnson can do. I think you need to see where some of these freshmen are. I mean, I don't think you give that lip service. I think that's a real thing that you got to look at seeing, because you never know when you're going to need somebody in a critical situation, and you don't want that critical situation to be their first time on the field. So I'd play a bunch of them early.
When the true second team guys get in, not the Lampleys, not the Davises, because they could be down there.
There is no true second team. There's your starting 5, and then there's 6, and then there's 7, and they're interchangeable to play a bunch of different positions and can float. Like, if you have an injury at left tackle, okay, your backup left tackle is not Jesse Perry. although on the depth chart, he may be the number 2 left tackle, AP. Your backup left tackle is going to be Campbell. You're going to flip him back. So there's not a true first team, second team, because there's so much interchangeable parts.
I guess what I'm saying is when Davis gets taken care of, when Lampley gets taken care of, who is the next? Because, I'm sure Davis will get a series at center against Chattanooga. Who's that next center? Is it going to be Satterwhite? Is it going to be Lang? Who's going to snap the football in Chattanooga?
I think it'll be William Satterwhite.
I agree.
I
agree right now. I think that's where it's at.
That I would have. Hub said Max Anderson. I would replace Anderson, and I would put Satterwhite in as the guy that along with Jesse Perry, that are most likely to be in the 2 deep. But again, that's if he earns the trust of the coaches, just like the whole Boo Carter thing. Like, they have intent to do a certain thing, but if the kid proves he can't handle it, then they're not going to just, stick their head in the hole and go, let's do it anyway. Like, they're going to put the best out there that at the time that gives them the best chance.
I think what's fascinating when you get into the backup deal, and maybe this is what you're alluding to, Eric, is where are those freshmen who arrived in January with some of those redshirt freshmen from a year ago? Where are the Satterwhites, the Andersons, the Perrys compared to the Bustles and the Shams and some of those, the Weiss and Langs and those guys who are red shirts and have been in the program a year versus the guys who have been here 7 or 8 months? I think that's an interesting thing for people who want to get deep in the weeds that has nothing to do with the starting 22.
Yeah, like I think it's interesting because, of course, your starters, say everybody's healthy right now. Carrick, let's say he's your starting left guard. Against UT Chattanooga, like Dane Davis and Jackson Lampley, they're going to get some work, right? When all those guys are out, like, and you put the Larry Johnsons in, like, kind of what's that? I'm intrigued to see kind of what that looks like. Larry Johnson at left tackle, right tackle, Sham at left guard, Satterwhite at center, so on and so forth. I'm intrigued to see what that is because, truly, this time next year, for your everybody but Hurd, Carey's got actually the right side of your offensive line and your 2 key backups, they're gone. So, like, you better get a look and see what these guys are all about. Given the Seldon injury last year, has there been any talk of Peyton Lewis at kick returner? Seems like he's got a similar speed, would have a good chance to get up some additional touches this year.
They fair catch 90% of them. I don't think that's an important spot.
Punt returns are much more important.
Yes, punt returns a much more significant position to figure out the answer to. I'm not saying they won't return a kick, but with the kicking, the way the kicking specialists are developed now, most of those things they're either in the end zone or through the end zone, or they're so high that you're fair catching it. And I think Tennessee fair catches more than they ever think about returning, and I think that'll continue.
Question on the development of some young guns. No, it's obviously very early on, some of these guys, but how is the staff feeling about the progress following through the first week of camp? Specifically, Nathan Robinson, unless we bring in transfers, it looks like he's in line for some real snaps in 2026. Here are the players. Nathan Robinson, Trevor Duncan, Bison Lang, William Satterwhite, Emmanuel Okoye. Thoughts on those guys through week 1 of fall camp, kind of their progression?
AP, you want to go? We talked about all those young offensive linemen. Throw Trevor Duncan in there. I think a real learning curve for him and go from there. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, I can tell you, kind of how the feeling is. We're not out there. We don't see enough to have our own opinion of any of those guys. You said 26. Nathan Robinson would be a real option in 25. Obviously, this fall he's just buried behind a lot of different, defensive linemen. But,
yeah, maybe the poster meant 25.
Yeah,
or
he did.
Maybe I missed. Maybe no, that's copy and paste. Maybe the poster meant 25.
Yeah, I'm sure he did mean 25. But either way, you better hope that Nathan Robinson takes a little bit of a step this year, proves he can stay healthy, Hubbard, because you're going to need that big body a year from now, because you do lose a lot on the interior of your defensive line.
Yeah, no doubt. And, we'll see where. Again, Emmanuel Okoye's practiced, 7, 8 times, maybe 10 times now, counting spring as a defensive end.
He is much more natural, though, over there than he was.
Agreed. Yeah, because there was nothing natural about him catching a football. So, he's clearly more, so we'll see. I think that is a project. He's still a project. and we'll see what that looks like in 25 and kind of where they are with all the Leos. I mean, you know what they have, potentially coming back in 25. We know Pierce is going to go and not be here, but then you got Herring, Jordan Ross. What's Joshua Josephs look like a year from now? I mean, you're going to have quite a few bodies available to you, it appears, at the Leo position right now.
We got plenty more questions to get into, but first, let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
That phone number for Exterior Home Solutions is 865-524-5888. And local and trusted since 1999. A big thanks to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. All right, let's get into some more questions. MDVol says, does in-helmet communication help away teams in tough environments like the Vols at Oklahoma? Rob, what do you think about that?
I think probably enormously. I mean, you probably can't put a price tag on how much it'll help.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's going to be fascinating to see exactly how Tennessee uses it offensively. I still contend for some, the defensive side of the ball is going to help with some late checks and some different things like that. So I don't think it gets discussed a whole lot from a defensive standpoint. I know Lane Kiffin said 5 or 6 months ago it was a cheat code for offensive coordinators because basically you can just tell the guy, hey, throw it to the Y, the wide receiver's wide open, or throw it to Sammy or whoever type deal.
Doesn't it turn off though?
It does, but it's still, you're going to tell him pre-snap. I mean, it's how Josh Dobbs beat the Falcons when he was with the Vikings, because the offensive coordinator's telling him, hey, watch this. Look for this. He didn't say throw it to X person, but he said, watch the high-low here. We got this combination or this. I mean, you can get pretty specific with it if you want to use it that way. But I do think with fast-paced offenses, it's the enhancement for the communication for the defensive guys, I think, is something that's probably not talked about a whole lot, that can be used to their advantage pretty quickly.
Big Vol 18 wants to know Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, combined receiving yards in 2024, over under 800 yards.
Under. I'm taking the under.
Well under. There's just too many mouths to feed. Way too many mouths to feed. Fulby T1 says, do you think Jordan Matthews is the third corner right now after Ricky Gibson and Bru McCoy?
No, Jalen McMurray is.
Nashville 615 asks, we've been one of the most penalized teams in the SEC, and last year felt especially bad. Do you think Heupel's done anything in practice to be more disciplined? I'm expecting no breaks from the SEC office. Brent, we talk about this every single year. By nature of the offense, you're going to get flagged an awful lot because it's, offensive pass interference, those screens out there on the edges a lot. He's going to get flagged a lot, but, I feel like that's just kind of par for the course. You don't like it, but that's what happens with this offense.
Yeah, but they've got to clean some stuff up beyond that. And I know Josh Heupel has made it a very clear point of emphasis to the officials on the practice field in this fall camp. Tighten it up. Call it tighter. Let's don't let guys get away with things, and I think he'll have the scrimmages called tighter. And, it's something he's very much aware of. You heard him say it in his opening press conference. Penalties, red zone inefficiencies, two areas they've got to clearly clean up and for this season, for this football team. Defensive penalties on third down situations, giving teams an extra set of downs. That type of thing. They've got to clean it up. I don't think they're going to suddenly go to be, Rob, the least penalized team in this league, but I do think they've got to clean it up because they've had too many penalties. They got away with it in 22 because they were so good offensively, but it's just hard to do that every year.
Yeah, I was going to say you noticed it a lot more last year because when, Hendon could pick up a 3rd and 7, whereas, 3rd and 7 was a death knell for the offense last year.
We've never seen this coaching staff play more than 4 wide receivers. There's legit 6 to 7 dudes that they could play. Who are your top 4 right now, AP?
I would go Brazel, Bru, Squirrel, and Chaz Nimrod. And I do think, again, best laid plans, I do think that the plan is to play a lot of wide receivers this fall and have a much bigger rotation. Again, best laid plans, but I do think that is the plan, as we said here on August 8th.
For as good of a spring as a guy like Dante Thornton had, he's not been much of a factor in fall camp because he's been limited. Brent, would you say that's an example of, hey, you better not miss a day because your spot might be taken?
Sure. I mean, I think the same could be said for Mike Matthews. I think Mike Matthews is missing a lot of critical time right now. Not to say he won't play, but I mean, yeah, you don't want to take a lot of days off. I mean, I think a guy like Chaz Nimrod, who's had a great off season, is taking advantage of it because he's out there every day. You know, there's some buzz on Nathan Leacock on Wednesday. You know, and I think that's a product of just being there every day and being healthy. You know, I don't know that he's going to step in and play a ton of snaps. We'll have to see, but yeah, you better not take a bunch of days off because there's competition there. And I think some of the names you're hearing are guys who aren't missing any reps. It's not Dante Thornton's fault. It's not, anybody. It's not Mike Matthews' fault. It's just a byproduct of, the need to stay healthy when you're in a position as competitive as that group is.
Gas up the Nico hype train. Tell us some of the great things you've heard about Nico in camp.
I don't know if there's anything new. I mean, it's almost to the point, AP, where it's like time to go play. I think when you have a veteran team, this is a pretty veteran team. And listen, nobody should not be excited, and it's hard to wait from now to the 31st, right? It's still a long ways away. I think Nico works hard every day. I think he makes good decisions on the practice field. The next step for Nico is to do it game in, game out, series in, series out in football games. And you practice for that, but I don't think you're going to suddenly say, wow, he's vastly better at his accuracy the first week of fall camp compared to where he was at the end of spring practice. He's physically heavier, but I don't know that in terms of mechanics and all those things, I don't know that there's anything drastically different from what we saw in the spring.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately you're just, a handful of days into fall camp. I mean, he's made plays. Multiple people have told me he's made plays that they couldn't make a year ago when they've been doing 11-on-11 work. But he's still he's still an inexperienced quarterback, so he's still going to have a few head-scratching moments. But on the whole, I mean, he's putting them in positions during practice that, they couldn't get in a year ago at times.
Should we expect 2022 Bru McCoy game 1, or do you think being hampered by the injury throughout the season is something to pay attention to, Rob?
I think he's looked really good. I mean, he's so confident too. I mean, maybe part of it's just his attitude. I mean, he's so confident. I mean, I would imagine he'll have some rust to shake off, but I mean, I don't think there's anything he physically is not going to be able to do in game 1. But maybe have to get used to being hit, being in the stadium, that kind of thing. But
I think the first time he should be hit is against Chattanooga. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I said that on the message board earlier in the week. I wouldn't scrimmage him. Now, he wants to scrimmage, but I wouldn't scrimmage him. His first scrimmage work, so to speak, would be against the box.
BThacker43 says, what is your prediction for the QB battle after Nico leaves with the other 3 that we will have? By that point, when Nico leaves, if everybody, according to plan, AP would be Jake Merklinger, George McIntyre, and Faison Brandon should be a freshman that year, right?
Who knows?
So the two of them aren't on campus.
Yeah, I mean,
and 2 of them haven't signed.
Yeah, I mean, again, who knows? I think it'll be a heck of a competition that spring. And Merklinger will have 2 years here if he's still here. George will have had 1 year in the system, and Faison will have to hit the ground running. So, who knows how it all shakes out. To me, it's exactly what you want. It's a deep room with a healthy competition, and surely out of that group of guys, one of those guys is going to be a hit, right? So I mean,
AP, am I hearing 60? Is that 60% Merklinger starts? Is that your percentage? Am I hearing that right?
No, you're not hearing it right. Don't even joke, Rob. They take all that stuff as serious.
All jokes aside, though, he will have the advantage because he will have been here for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's a bit of a wash from a standpoint.
Doesn't mean he plays, but I'm just saying.
I think he has an advantage over Faison. I don't mean 2 years versus 1 year for George. I think once you've been here for a year, I think it kind of softens the gap, so to speak.
Yeah, go through a couple of camps, yeah. Iheartvols wants to know what player or players that Tennessee didn't land do you think that Tennessee would be legitimate candidates for if they were to enter the transfer portal and look around? All this hypothetically speaking. He gives a couple of examples here like Jordan Seaton, Francis, Ryan Wingo, etc.
Got a little, I'm not trying to be mean, and I mean this is the hypothetical podcast for all these questions. It's 18 months down the road or 2 years down the road, or I don't know. I read a story where Jordan Seaton was getting bullied and beat up at Colorado, and then I saw his press conference where he was talking about how happy he is at Colorado. So I don't know who's going to go in the portal, who's not going to go in the portal. I think coaches do a good job, and you have to in this day and age. Tennessee's not the only one. But coaches do a good job of, for the most part, of not, just laying into a kid if they don't get him, because they want to keep that possibility and that communication line potentially open if somebody were to go in the portal, a year later or 2 years later. That's the life we live in now. So, who knows? I don't know who's going in. I don't know who Tennessee would have any interest in at that point in time. What does your room look like? What other guys are available? Is the coach that recruited him still here? What would be the reasoning for the kid to be leaving? Would you have interest in him? Is he leaving because he was not a good teammate or because he wasn't as good as you thought? There's just so many variables out there that hypothetically you just can't even get into that conversation realistically with any kind of realism.
Chada_Vols wants to know which would be bigger for recruiting. Y'all are going to love this one. Example A, making the playoffs with a first-round bye and only winning the quarterfinal game, or making the playoffs with a first-round home game but only winning the first-round game. Just making the playoffs going to help, right? I guess the home game so that they can come and watch, but making the playoffs, AP, that's going to help in recruiting tremendously.
Yeah, I just being a part of that show where they unveil it and your logo pops up, and then all the coverage leading up, whether it's a home game and you win and then you lose in the quarters, or you get a bye to the quarters and you advance to the semis and you get bounced there. Either way, I think all that's good for your program.
Sloppy Vols got a couple of fact or fiction statements that we're going to do. First one, this team breaks/ties the total sacks record in 2024. There were 50 in 2000. That tops UT history. Tennessee had 41 last year. So fact or fiction, Tennessee breaks the sack record this season.
No.
I think they flirt with it, but I don't. Now, here's the thing. You make the playoff, you play extra games, certainly a possibility. You were 9 away from it a year ago, right? Is that what you just said? You said you were 9 away?
What the poster put, yeah.
If you make you get a couple extra games, you're certainly there in the conversation. That one's not unrealistic to say you could have 50 sacks.
No, would also help with that 5.5 sacks from the interior of Omar Norman-Lott last year, and Tyler Barron had 6.5. A couple of guys are gonna have to accumulate a lot, not just James Pierce.
I'm gonna go fact. They're gonna do it before they play Vanderbilt.
Woo!
There's my hot take of the day. I will beat the dead horse from now until the season. The snaps that Roman Harrison had a year ago that are now with the other group. I think that's going to be a hidden stat there when it comes to that particular stat, which is sacks.
Another fact or fiction, Squirrel will end up leading Tennessee in all-time catches and or yards. He has the most through a sophomore year of any wide receiver in school history. He needs 86 more catches and 1,530 more yards in the next 2 seasons. He currently has 97 receptions, 1,284 yards. So, When it's all said and done, Squirrel White's going to be the Tennessee leader in yards and receptions.
As Squirrel stays healthy, I think he'll definitely get those numbers.
Yeah, I think it's all about health, and we don't know that. So I would say fact.
But I think I'm not saying a lot. I think Squirrel's underrated. I mean, you see, everybody wants to talk about Mike Matthews or Dante Thornton or Brazel or Bru McCoy. Man, I mean, look at Squirrel's numbers. I mean, like you we don't have to look at him. He's been really productive for two years.
Well, in the slot position in this offense is the productive position. So, I mean, if he's the man for 2 more years, now does his opportunities get diminished because they're rotating more players? Does he not have as much this year because instead of him playing, 90 snaps a game, he's playing 70 snaps a game because they're playing Chaz Nimrod at the slot or somebody else in the slot that's taking up some of those opportunities. I don't know the answer to that, but based on what we've seen the first 2 years, if he stays healthy, yeah, I mean, I think that's a very realistic thing that he could leave, certainly as the all-time receptions leader.
TNVol says in the Tuesday podcast, you guys talked about how the staff's done a great job of identifying their quarterback targets early and committing to that one guy. How early did the staff decide to not enter the Arch sweepstakes and go all in on Nico? Were there real conversations with Arch, or was it Nico from the beginning?
It was Nico from the beginning.
Yeah, and I don't think in any kind of preliminary anything preliminary with Arch. I mean, Arch wasn't going to follow Peyton, and I think most everybody knew that. And Tennessee loved Nico. So it wasn't like, well, we can't get Arch, so we'll go after this Nico guy. It wasn't that, but at the same time too, I don't think there was ever any thought that there would be anything real with Arch Manning. And Tennessee really liked Nico, really liked Nico. So I think it was Nico from the jump. That's the guy they targeted.
Athrun's got a couple here. Where do we go for linebacker recruiting right now?
They're going to take a swing at Jaden Harmon, the Alabama commit, and see, if he will re-engage. Tennessee was very much up there originally before he committed to Alabama, so we'll see what happens there. Outside of that, I don't know. Could just be portal.
Any new running back names to keep an eye on?
No, DeJuan Morris, and again, that's another one I think they made on the portal unless there's a senior eval.
The interesting thing about that room too is I think you got to look at that room. Where do you think that room's going to be in 25 in terms of who all do you have back? What's your depth look like there? To the point of what is your need for another back in this class? I don't think you're taking a body AP just to take a body because of where you're at. I mean, we'll see what Dylan Sampson does at the end of this year. You got Cam Seldon, you got Peyton Lewis. They like Deshaun Bishop. I like Deshaun Bishop. I mean, I'm not saying all those guys are going to be here, but if you're pretty heavy coming back, I don't think you take a guy just to say you get a second guy in the class.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, it could depend on who goes, right? Like this, if Khalif Keith leaves or Deshaun Bishop leaves or Dylan Sampson turns pro after a good junior year, then it could alter what you do.
Right.
If everybody stays, then you're right. It doesn't make much sense. Now, I would tell you they're probably going to lose at least somebody, right? Like
that's what history says. I mean, in the day and age of the portal, that makes the most sense. But we don't know that right now, so I don't think you're taking a guy in early September just to say you got a second guy.
Let's get to 2 more questions here. Our friend Logan Bartlett chimes in. Ellerby mentioned that Hype has been emphasizing rotating offensive linemen, and Brent mentioned that the safeties have been rotating more recently. Is this something that you've heard as the top-down mandate to get more of the young players involved?
Well, I think it's always talked about. I think Rodney Garner has, to his credit, is 100% accurate. He has always done that. When he was at Auburn, he did it. When he was at Georgia, he did it. I mean, he's always rotated guys. Tennessee went healthy at cornerback, at defensive back, and the corners last year. Were playing 4 guys when they were healthy. Now, they ended up not being healthy there, but they rotated there. Brian Jean-Marie rotated his group. So, I mean, it's all talk till it happens. So we'll see if it happens. It's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, Cooper May's not coming out of the game because they're rotating centers. Now, he should come out of the game if the game is out of hand, which we talked about, I think, on Tuesday in the podcast. They have to do a better job of getting backups in when opportunity presents. Again, I don't think you have to put all your starters out there for the first series of the second half when you're up 4 touchdowns so they know how to act and get loose coming out of the locker room at halftime. I think I've never understood that notion, but we'll see. I think I think it's easy to talk about doing. It's harder to actually do it. If you're in a rhythm and you're in a groove offensively, are you going to say, hey, let's get so-and-so in there for a series at guard or at tackle when we've just scored a touchdown the last 2 series? We're hot, things are going, or we really want to mess with it, or we just going to keep rolling in what we're doing? The easy answer there is you just keep rolling in what you were doing, and I think that's what's happened for the most part. They talked about rotating some on the offensive line last year, AP, and it never materialized.
Best laid plans.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll never forget that drive against Kentucky 2020 season. Freshman left guard Javonte Spraggins goes in. They march down the field 75 yards, score a touchdown. The next series, he's not out there because that makes a whole lot of sense. Last one. Let's go around the room here. What is your biggest concern about this football team entering the season? Rob, we'll start with you.
It's not a concern, I think they have talent back there, but just the secondary. I mean, I would say probably my biggest curiosity. What's it going to look like? I mean, once they have, what's that picture look like? And again, I think they're way more talented than they have been there in a while. But you've got the Jordan Thomas injury was not ideal. Just what do they look like? Again, I don't. It's not a concern like it would have been the last couple of years. But I would say secondary. Just what do they look like?
Mine would be safety, specifically in the secondary. Mine would be safety. Austin?
For me, it's the backup quarterback. Period.
That's a good one. See, I was not going to jinx it.
Yeah,
even
wait
mention
to
that, AP, but that did cross my mind.
Yeah, CSWVol thinks that I agree with CSWVol. Like, it's not like they didn't try to bring in a quarterback. I do think that they're playing with fire with the inability to have anybody behind Nico that has any kind of real merit to them. I like Gaston more. Could he win them a game if they needed him to? It depends on who they're playing. But I don't think you want him out there for any extended action as far as games. And I just don't think Merklinger's ready yet. I mean, the kid's a true freshman. If Nico wasn't ready a year ago, Jake Merklinger sure is not. So, I guess for me, it's just backup quarterback.
For me, early on to start the year, it's what do they look like at running back behind Dylan Sampson? What's that group look like? Because you got to play more than one running back. So where are they at the running back position behind Dylan Sampson? Given the newness of Peyton Lewis and the health of Cam Seldon not being there yet for contact, so that would be there. And then again, I think what does this secondary look like in the interior? Star and safety. How do you play that? What does that look like? That would be two of my concerns. Rolling in at this point in time, which is kind of where probably was a month ago, right? I mean, even with Jordan Thomas healthy, I probably had those same questions. So I don't know that anything's changed from a question standpoint through a week plus of fall camp.
Appreciate you guys.
Let me say this too.
Go ahead.
Those questions are you could go into 4 or 5 more because you pick the scab on the team that you cover every day and you talk to people about every day. Right, AP? It's just one of those deals where it's like, okay, now, like somebody's on the board is like, Hubs is obsessed with backup center. Well, I mean, to me, that's a question, but it's a question because I'm deep in the weeds with this team. I don't have those questions about other teams because I'm not picking the scab of those other teams. But when you follow a particular team as deeply and as closely as you do, then it's easy to find little warts along the way and pick at those scabs to find question marks compared to just casually following.
And because how many times can you turn to the guy beside you and say, "Man, did you see Nico throw that one?" Whew.
Yeah, that's true too.
I mean, or anything like that. I mean, you just can't keep pumping things up.
All that's great, guys. But the real question, the way we'll end is, Hubs, do you think the Vols will land Marshall Manning? And if they don't, what are the odds they get him back within 18 months out of the transfer portal? Go.
Well, if they don't, is that a Peyton Manning's jinx? Where does that factor into the equation now? Because is the jinx over? Or is the jinx still alive? It's over.
The jinx is over. He
It's
was in
over.
Omaha.
It's
They won the whole
over,
thing.
right? I mean,
Never a thing to begin with. It's called he's your biggest ambassador. He would come to games. He doesn't want to come watch him play Chattanooga. He would come to Alabama, and Tennessee sucked for 15 years. There was no jinx.
And AP, on top of that, will all will Gruden show cause in public be over in time for him to come back and coach Marshall?
All right. Thanks as always for sending in your questions for the Mailbag podcast here on a Thursday. Big thanks to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. ExteriorHomeSolutions.com. The phone number is 865-524-5888. And they've been local and trusted since 1999. These summer storms are no joke. If you need home repairs or home renovations, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. A lot going on right now. Recruiting just continues to be on a hot streak for Tennessee. Plenty of coverage over at Volquest.com. Camp notes, daily scrimmage coming up on Friday. No better time to join us than right now, Brent Hubs.
No, absolutely. This is the time where you want to be a part, and we're offering plenty of things, plenty of content, and a variety of platforms for everybody, and I hope you're enjoying them, and that's only going to continue throughout this month to get you ready for kickoff against Chattanooga, and then obviously settle into the regular content of the season, and we're looking forward to all that we have to offer you throughout this month and throughout the fall. So it's a great time to check us out.
That's Brent Hubs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price. I'm Eric Kane. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.